morning, everybody. Just want to do a quick introduction. If you guys are new here, my name is Rachelle. I've been sharing my journey through IVF and fertility for a couple of years now here on YouTube, and I just wanted to share some of my IVF transfer prep tips, things to do the day before, the day of, and the days after your IVF transfer. I have done 4 frozen embryo transfers. I've never done a fresh one. My clinic only does frozen, but I've done 4 frozen embryo transfers over the course of the last couple of years, and I have 3 beautiful babies with me, and I just wanted to share with you guys a couple of tips and tricks and things that I did to what I believe help make my IVF cycles successful. Speaking of, if you guys hear kids in the background, I am in my bedroom trying to film this while my husband watches the kids. I filmed this video actually 2.5 years ago, but I put it on a different channel and I don't use that channel anymore, and I've gone through another cycle since then, so I had new information, just updated, and wanted to refilm this for you guys in 2021. Last one was in 2019 when my daughter Emma was like 8 or 9 months old, which is crazy. Okay, my first 2 tips are gonna be for leading up to your embryo transfer. My first tip is gonna be make sure you guys are stocked up with all of your meds. I went through this after, I think it was my first or second transfer, when I realized on day 1 or 2 after my embryo transfer that I was out of PIO, and it was this huge stressful situation trying to figure out how to contact and get more and have it expedited to me. And obviously PIO and estradiol, whatever medications your doctor has you on, are incredibly important, and you don't want to be stressed out. IVF transfers are stressful enough as it is, and the last thing you should be worrying about is making sure you're stocked up on meds. So leading up to your embryo transfer, make sure you have enough for a couple weeks worth of your PIO, your needles, whatever you might need, because the last thing you need is to be stressed out the day after your transfer, worrying that you're not going to have enough when you find out that you're pregnant. My second pre-transfer tip is to just be as healthy as you possibly can, obviously leading up into your transfer. I know that this is kind of out of your control, but try and maybe stay away from going out too much and just keep your immune system really nice and healthy. My first embryo transfer that I had was the first one that actually did not work for us, and it's the only embryo transfer that didn't work for us, and I was sick after my embryo transfer, or the day before and the day of, and for a couple days after. I had a nasty cough, and that transfer didn't work, which my doctor told me that she didn't think that that's why. I just honestly believe that that was the one contributing factor that I did differently than my other transfers, that transfer did not work. I had a nasty cough. I was, I don't know, contracting a lot when I was coughing, and your uterus obviously kind of contracts when you cough. Obviously I can't prove that, but I honestly believe that that was a huge factor in why my first transfer didn't work, is I just had that really nasty cough, and it was pretty bad. But you want to be healthy going into your embryo transfer anyway, so maybe just stay home for like a week leading up and make sure that you're in a healthy, safe environment where you're not going to be exposed to a bunch of germs, because you really want to be at 100% when you're going in for your embryo transfer. My next tips are for the day of your embryo transfer. I will say I'm a type A person, so this may not surprise you if you know me, but make sure you arrive to the clinic early. Leave an extra 20 or 30 minutes early, because again, you want to make sure you're eliminating as much stress as you possibly can, and you don't want to be late for your embryo transfer. My IVF clinic is about an hour and 10-ish, or give or take 10 minutes from where I live, and I always make sure to leave, making sure that I will be there 10 to 15 minutes beforehand. It's just the last thing you need is to arrive late and worry that you're gonna, for some reason, miss your embryo transfer or anything like that. Just make sure that you arrive early, allow for plenty of time. Just do everything you can to make sure you're there on time with ample time. That way it's just eliminating that stress from your life. This is just a side tip, but don't be afraid after your embryo transfer to like get up and use the bathroom. This is something that I experienced, and I talked to my doctor about it, and she always laughs because everybody feels this way after the embryo transfer. You can get up and use the restroom. You don't need to be stressed about that. Okay, after your embryo transfer, you're gonna go home. If your clinic is anything like mine, then when they do the embryo transfer, they actually give you a pair of those socks with like the rubber on them so you're not slipping around on the floor. Those are really good socks. You should take those home and wear them for the rest of that week. I don't know if it's like a myth or anything, but apparently keeping your feet warm is a huge part of IVF, because it keeps your happy feet is a happy uterus, is like the quote. And it's essentially so that your blood flow isn't rushing to your feet to keep your feet warm. It's staying in your uterus and making a perfect environment environment for the embryo to implant. This is one of those things that's like, it's just like something that I've always done. I always wear my warm socks when I leave the clinic. They just let me keep that pair, and I wear them for the rest of the day, and then for the rest of the week, I stick to socks and shoes if I'm gonna be wearing shoes, and I don't wear sandals. I wanna keep my feet nice and warm so that my uterus stays happy and warm. Number 3, make sure you plan for that day to rest the entire day. My embryo transfer where I got pregnant with my daughter Emma, I obviously did not have kids at home yet, so this was really easy. I just came home from my transfer, I laid in bed, and that was that. I hang out there for the rest of the day. However, when I had my embryo transfer with my twin boys, that was different because I had a toddler running around. If you have young kids, just make sure you have help that day and assume bed rest for the rest of the day. Essentially, like you're sick, just stay in bed. You can get up to use the bathroom. Don't think that you can't get up to grab food or pee or whatever you need to do, but just plan for rest that day. Plan for not carrying around your kids. Have someone to help you at home that day so that you can literally spend that entire day resting and relaxing. Use it as like a sick day. Now let's talk about food. I always encourage people to eat something warm after their IVF transfer. It can be whatever you want. You could get some soup, you could get something, I don't know what else would be warm, just something warm. The idea behind this kind of goes hand in hand with keeping your feet warm. It's to keep your uterus really warm and creating like a sustainable environment. My tradition is every time after I have an embryo transfer, my husband or my mom, when she lived here, would go pick me up pho from a local shop, and I have that literally every time. 1, because it's really warm. 1, 2, it's really good. And 3, it's so filling that I feel like I don't need to be getting up a million times to snack throughout the day because it fills me up so much. So get someone to pick you up some soup or some pho or some ramen, whatever appeals to you, and just have something warm to eat right after your embryo transfer. Along with that, another food tip, something that I always do, is eat pineapple core. This is something that I read about on an IVF blog years before, like 5 years ago now probably. And it's something I've done with every IVF transfer. So essentially you take a pineapple, you'll cut the sides off, cut the top off, and cut it into 5 slices. And I would recommend eating one the day before your transfer, the day of your transfer, and for the 3 days following. Supposedly there's some sort of enzyme or something in the pineapple core that is supposed to help with implantation. It's actually like a symbol for infertility for a lot of women, the pineapple. And it tastes so good. It tastes exactly the same as the rest of the pineapple, the core. It's just a little bit more chewy. That's the only way to describe it. It takes a little bit longer to swallow because you have to chew it a bit more, but it tastes the same. It's really good, and it's filling, again, a good snack. I know that a lot of people associate pineapple with miscarriage, and I don't know where that started from, but I did a lot of research on it when I originally started IVF, and it's just a myth. I asked my doctor about it because it had come up in the comments so many times back then, and she told me you would have to eat essentially an ungodly amount of pineapple for there to be any sort of reaction. So don't worry about eating pineapple when you're trying to get pregnant. The embryo hasn't even implanted at that point yet, so it's not going to cause a miscarriage. All right, time for the tips following your embryo transfer. So my very first embryo transfer, after my first day of bed rest, that bed rest I talked about, I didn't get out of bed for 3 days. I figured in my head, if I just don't move around and don't move at all, then the embryo will implant. If I walk around and I'm moving around, then I can cause the embryo to not implant. But that did not work out for me. That was the one cycle where I did that, where I ended up not getting pregnant. The rest of my cycles, I resumed my normal activity, and those are the 3 cycles where I ended up getting pregnant. Obviously, you follow your clinic's protocol, and if they want you to stay on bed rest, then that's up to your own discretion and what you believe is best. But for me personally, mine recommends just resuming normal activity after that first day, and that's exactly what I've done. I'm pretty sure with my daughter's embryo transfers, I just went back to work, and with my boys when I got pregnant, we literally moved the next day. But that's my other next tip, no heavy lifting. And that will resume for the rest of your pregnancy if you end up getting pregnant. I think it was 20 pounds was my doctor's limit. Do not lift more than 20 pounds. Don't try and be doing things outside of your regular activity, such as grocery shopping and cleaning the house, that kind of stuff, but no heavy lifting. So make sure that you do limit yourself to a point, but you can resume your normal activity. Don't feel like you have to lay in bed for a couple days. I personally don't recommend that. I feel like that would make you overthink everything and kind of go crazy. Staying busy is my best tip. And most people, when they're trying to get pregnant naturally, are not laying in bed after they ovulate for a week. So I don't think that that is necessary at all. And my clinic recommends that you just resume activity. Obviously, again, follow what your doctor recommends, but that's my best advice is to not lay in bed for 3 days. Next tip is a huge one for me and one that a lot of people are here and there about, and it's obviously up to you, but my best recommendation is to not take a pregnancy test after your IVF transfer. As I mentioned, I've done all frozen embryo transfers. I've never done a fresh transfer before. So I know a lot of people will test after their fresh transfer because they're trying to test out the trigger shot, essentially trying to make sure that that hormone that is in the IVF trigger shot for a fresh transfer is out of your system so you don't get a false positive. I've done frozen only, but even with a fresh transfer, I just personally do not recommend taking a pregnancy test at home until after your clinic calls you. I, again, did this with my first transfer. I think I took it at 9 days after my embryo transfer, which would have been 11, 12, 13, 14 days past ovulation if you're trying to get pregnant naturally. And it broke me because it was negative. And after going through infertility for so long, you stare at pregnancy tests and you try and convince yourself that you see a line or whatever it might be. You see, oh, is it getting darker? Is it getting lighter? It's just this constant, I don't know what the word is. It messes with your head a little bit. So after that first transfer, I told myself I'm never taking a pregnancy test until after the clinic calls me. And every other transfer I have not tested because it gives me so much anxiety to be stressing about staring at a test rather than listening to my doctor when they call and saying, yes, you are pregnant or no, you are not. I would personally recommend just waiting for that call so that you are not giving yourself a really hard time staring at tests, wondering why if you're taking one 6 days after or 7 days after, is it gonna get darker? Is it not gonna get darker? I wonder if the line is supposed to be darker by now. It's just, it all creates a stressful situation that IVF is even worse, and I don't ever recommend people take those tests. It's completely up to you and what you are comfortable with, but for me, it saved my sanity the last 3 embryo transfers that I had to just wait until I got a call from the clinic. And my very last tip, and I have gone through this as well, so I'm with you if this is you, is to not be symptom happy. And that basically means to overthink every little thing that's going on in your body following your embryo transfer. It's so easy to do this because if you're going through IVF, then obviously you want to be pregnant so badly that you start to overthink everything that's going on. Oh, I'm a little bit nauseous, I could be pregnant, or I'm not feeling anything at all, I don't think I'm pregnant. There's so many different directions that it could go in, and it kind of drives you a little bit like obsessive over it, and that's not where you want to be mentally. There's nothing wrong with thinking positive and being like, okay, well, I feel a little bit nauseous, like maybe that's a pregnancy sign, but then also recognizing that you're probably on a bunch of hormones and your body is just going to react differently to those hormones regardless of if you're pregnant or not. Just protect your heart, protect your mind, and make sure that you're thinking clearly and not over assuming every little twinge and anything, thinking like, oh, I didn't have implantation cramps, I shouldn't be pregnant, or I'm nauseous, I have to be pregnant. Just try and stay neutral and don't hurt your mind by stressing over it. Those are my best tips for anyone that's going through their first or second or third IVF transfer. As I mentioned, I've gone through 4 frozen embryo transfers. My first didn't work, my second did. However, my daughter passed away when she was 20 weeks along in the womb. And my second to my daughter Emma was completely successful. And then my last, I got pregnant with twins during my IVF cycle. So I've been through the ringer just like you guys are probably going through right now, and I empathize with you, and I will be doing it again at the end of this year, which is crazy. It's an incredibly stressful time, but there is so much joy in finally getting to hold your precious IVF babies after all that you guys have gone through. I promise that it is worth every needle, every medication, every symptom, stress, all of that. It is 1,000,000% worth it. I hope that this was helpful to those of you guys who are going through IVF and that you are able to have a stress-free, as much as you can, IVF transfer and think positively and just go forward. And I don't know, I wish nobody had to go through this. Just know my heart is with you, and I wish you all the best of luck in your IVF transfers. Bye.